Hello, everyone. I believe we are live. Megan Tasliman in Thyroid Healthy Balance. Very important topic today. And in fact, I've just been speaking to three women this morning, two of which reached out to learn more about the Thyroid Restoration Roadmap and what we do. And you know what? I'm hearing this story so often that, like you're taking thyroxine or you're taking some sort of medication and it's basically, I mean, this is outdated. Like, this is actually outrageous. I'm really pissed off. I just swore. I'm really pissed off because this is an outdated paradigm. Ladies, gents, if you're coming on, this is so outdated. It's a 50-year-old paradigm that you take thyroxine and your thyroid symptoms are all going to go away. Okay, so here, if you're interested and if you're wanting to learn more about what you can do on a foundational layer for your body, for your health, for your wellness, for your longevity, for your thyroid, listen in. Okay, listen in and just, grab a pen and paper and take some notes because it's so much more than just taking the medication. And don't get me wrong, for some people, the medication will work. But for many people it won't. Because generally by the time you've got a diagnosed thyroid condition, there are lots of other pieces to the puzzle. So this is why when we take the medication, I've not taken it. So when you take the medication, there can be an issue there. And the issue is that the medication is knocking on the door, but nobody's home because there are other foundational elements at play. Okay. Alrighty. So if you're here today and if you're joining me live and you're wanting to get to the bottom of, why you don't feel better on thyroxine and what to do about it, I'd like you to type Holy Grail. Okay, if you're wanting to learn more about what to do, because you know what, the Holy Grail isn't the pill, it isn't the medication, it never was, it never will be. And it's been the same story for decades, 50 years. That you do a pathology test and, oh, TSH is out of whack. Okay, Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism. Here we go. Here's a thyroxine or here's a levothyroxine. Okay. In some cases, here's the T3 medication, which arguably won't work if your adrenals are in the pits and if you've got high cortisol. Okay, because your cells are inflamed. Okay, so we need to look beyond this thought process. And this is one of the reasons why I'm very passionate about working in this area, because whilst having a thyroid challenge can be complex, it's also quite easy when you know what's going on. All right, it's quite easy. And we need to allow for longevity. We need to allow for time. This is what sometimes people are a little bit frustrated because it's like, okay, I did that. But, we need to allow for time. I just had one of the chats that I had with this morning. She said, I've been told to go gluten-free, but then when I looked at all the gluten-free products, there was high sugar in them. So I don't know. I don't know whether I want to put that in my body. And I'm like, absolutely too right. And you know what? Going gluten-free, just to give an example, is just bandied around as though that's another little thing that's going to correct everything. All right. So here's the big question. We could argue, well, what is more inflammatory? Is it the gluten or is it all the other rubbish that's trying to make gluten-free bread taste like real bread? you know. So here's the quandary here, right? All right, so let's get into this live training. And if you're here watching the recording or the replay, just give me a hashtag replay so that I can see who's tuned in today. That would be very, very helpful. And certainly if you're here today, I can see a couple of you jumping in. Let me know that you're here. give me a wave, give me a thumbs up. And what I'd love is just, ask questions along the way. This is, my goal today is to deliver a live training where you will get an aha moment and you will think, okay, that could be the case for me, right? So that you can be better equipped to know what's going on in your body. All right, so let me just change the screen here. Okay. All right, so this training is specifically for people who are diagnosed with hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, or even Graves, and you're on thyroxine, okay? You typically don't feel better. You've been taking this and your expectations are not being met, all right? And there's a very good reason for this, okay? So whether it's your thyroid is out of whack, Hashimoto's, Graves, or whether you've got symptoms, you're on thyroxine because you've got a sluggish thyroid. You may have fatigue, brain fog, weight gain, hair fall, cold extremities. Even recently I've been hearing a lot of people getting heart palpitations. That to me tells me that the cells in the thyroid just aren't talking. And there's certainly elements where your cardiovascular symptoms are included, because our T3 innervates every single cell in the body. All right, so this is why if, the door's shut and, the thyroxine's knocking on the door but nobody's home, this is why there's all of these different and weird signs and symptoms because our thyroid is required for every single cell in the body, across every single organ, within every single system. So this is why there's such a diverse range of signs and symptoms. Okay. All right. So here's the promise versus the reality of thyroxine, the medication. All right. So it's meant to replace your thyroid hormone. That's why you're prescribed it, because typically with a high TSH, it is argued that, the TSH, which is the thyroid stimulating hormone, is working really hard to innervate the thyroid to produce the thyroxine, and it's not really doing a great job. So therefore, what happens is we bring in the medication, which is called thyroxine. All right. Now, thyroxine is a pro-hormone. Okay. So what that means is it's not your most metabolically active hormone. Okay. In fact, T3 is 80% more metabolically active than the pro-hormone T4, which is thyroxine. So then you can understand, you may understand that, if you're taking thyroxine and your symptoms aren't resolving, well, there's clearly a conversion issue between the thyroxine or the T4 and the T3, which actually happens in the liver and also in your cells. All right. So there's many reasons why this can occur. Okay. And when I look at pathology, we want to know what the T3 is. We also want to know what the reverse T3 is, because if it's not going to T3 and you're a highly stressed individual, or you have adrenal fatigue and quite a significant amount of stress, or you've undergone a lot of stress, which could be like be like the change of life stage, like perimenopause, postpartum, etc. These are times of stress within your body. So it could be this as well, which is why often, thyroid issues occur around these times. So where do I start here? Okay, let me just get my train of thought here. Take a deep breath. All right, so T3. So T3 is the driver of your energy. It's the driver of your metabolism. It's the driver of your cellular vitality, right? So if the T4 isn't converting well into the T3, well, therefore you've got a deficiency of T3. Or potentially the ratio between T4 and T3 isn't adequate. Because when we look at a pathology test, we want to make sure that the ratio of T3 to T4 T4 to T3 is a 3-to-1. All right, so for example, if you've got T4 sitting around 18, you want your T3 sitting around 6, because 3 sixes are 18. All right. We also want to know what your reverse T3 is doing, and we also want to know whether there are autoantibodies present, in which case your diagnosis would be Hashimoto's as opposed to hypothyroidism. Okay. All right, so that's just to give you the lay of the land there with what to look for. And if all you have on your pathology test is TSH and free T4, well then, and you're taking thyroxine and you're not feeling better, I'm telling you now, you need to dig deeper, right? You need to dig deeper. You need to ask for the full thyroid panel. And you know that's very surface level investigation. You know, it's really it's not looking very far at all. You know, because where I like to look is really to dive down into the root causes as to why things aren't working. And with that, we look at what's happening in the cell. We look at what's happening in the cell. Oh, my team is going off here. Sorry about that buzzing. Okay, we look at what's going on in the cell. We look at what's going on in the digestion. We look at what's going on with the conversion, with stress, with adrenals, all of that, because it all plays a role. You know, it's really, really important to understand the complete picture, because then you're going to understand why the thyroxine isn't doing what it's, you've been told it should do. So then what do we do? Do we go after thyroxine? Potentially. If it's not working, potentially, right? And we look at, bringing cohesion back, and, we make sure that the gland is healthy. So the gland needs to be healthy. You know, the little thyrocytes where the conversions take place, where we absorb our minerals to make our thyroxine, that needs to be healthy. So if you don't have a thyroid gland, yes, you need to be on thyroxine. Okay. You need to, because you don't have a gland to produce thyroxine. So there's no way of not, functioning. You need to be. If you don't have a thyroid gland and you're taking thyroxine and you still have poor symptoms, that is because there's other areas. And like at the end of the day, we've got a synthetic medication coming through, or it could be desiccated thyroid, but we've got that coming through. But we want to make sure that that's able to do its job properly by improving the health of the cell, improving the minerals and the backbone of minerals, so that your body actually knows what to do. Okay, improving your liver function, improving your digestive system, improving all of these other areas, because just like what I said in the beginning, our thyroid has a function in every single cell, thyroid hormone, I should say, in every single cell in the body. All right, does that make sense? All right, so what I'd love, just to get a bit of feedback here. So whether you're watching this now or you're watching it on the replay, I'd like you to drop in the comments T3 if you've never been told that it's the active hormone. I would like you to drop it in the comments. This is if you've never been told that T3 is the more metabolically active thyroid hormone. Right, just so that I can get a bit of an understanding of people within this group, how much what's going on with the education out there, because education is power, especially when you know then what to apply for yourself in attaining that understanding and education. All right. So just drop it in the comments. Okay, I've just got a little bit of a different setup here today. Let's go back here. All right, so Leanne and Shell, so never been told. Yep, absolutely. It's very common. It's very common. Yeah, so just drop that in the comments, and I'm just gonna flick back between the screens because I get a bit distracted by that. All right, so why the TSH and the T4 paradigm fails? Well, here's the thing. TSH, which is called thyroid stimulating hormone, and T4, which is your hormone or thyroxine, these actual pathology markers do not reflect what's going on at a cellular level in your body. Right? They do not reflect what's going on in a cellular level. Okay, so this is a snapshot in time. It's taken from your blood, so we know what's going on in the blood, but we don't know what's really going on underneath. Okay, so this is why you can have normal labs and still feel fatigue, still have the weight gain or the brain fog or the low mood, and you could also have abnormal labs and still feel the brain fog and the weight gain and the fluid retention and the low mood, etc., etc. Because, you know, the picture is way more complex than just looking at the thyroid. You know, we don't want to just shine the light on the thyroid because then we're just manipulating the medication depending on the pathology. And I'd love to know this too. Who here needs to go back to their endocrinologist every 3 or 4 months to have the blood test taken? Right? To check the bloods, to then manipulate the medication depending on what the blood test result is. Who needs to do that? Right? So again, you know, this is quite superficial because the ranges are based on population studies and you're a unique individual. So, you know, you might run on a higher TSH than someone else, all right? Or vice versa. So this is why it's really important to understand what's going on for each individual. And the only way to do that is to have a deeper dive, do some functional testing, and understand clearly what's going on, where the sabotaging blocks are. And yeah, so that we can actually get to correct that on that deeper layer. Okay, so what I'd love to hear now is, you know, if you have had normal blood tests but you still feel awful, just put in the comments symptoms, right? Because I'd love to find out what your symptoms are, because often when I hear of, because the symptoms are quite diverse, there's a huge range of symptoms, and when I hear the symptoms, I can often pick up this body system that is broken, or not broken, I don't like that word, the body system that's not functioning all that well. Okay, and it just gives us an understanding of where to look, you know, to really start to formulate your health picture to see what's going on. You know, it could be that there's some toxic elements in your system. It could be that you're living in an environment that is creating some toxicity within your cells. You know, there are a lot of reasons why your thyroid could be misbehaving and out of whack. All right. Okay, so let's just talk about the hidden blocks now that stop the medication from working. So first of all, as I mentioned a moment ago, there are the conversion blocks. Okay, so this is the conversion blocks. So converting T4 to the more metabolically active T3, which occurs in the liver and other organs and tissues and in the cells. Every cell in the body. We have 37 trillion cells in the body, by the way. So, you know, that's a lot of, obviously they're microscopic, but there's a lot of hormone there that is required. Okay, so genetic variance is one of the blocks. So you could have a little genetic variant, or a little SNP, which is a single nucleotide polymorphism, which is kind of like a little fancy name for a little defect. We all have them, so don't be alarmed, don't worry. But you may have them on your deiodinases, which is the enzyme that helps with this conversion. Okay, so we have deiodinases that help with the formulation of our thyroxine, because our body, our thyroid gland makes thyroxine from iodine and selenium. Sorry, iodine and tyrosine. Let's start again. And then it's actually helped along with selenium. Okay, very simplistic model here. All right. There's another block is stress. Stress is huge. You cannot underestimate the impact of stress. Okay, stress is the body's alert response and signal that basically says slow down. So as humans, we typically push through that, don't we? So we're not going to slow down and this is going to continue on and this has become a pattern. Well, then what happens is the thyroid goes, well, if you're not going to stop, I'm going to stop you. I'm going to slow you down. So then the T4, instead of going into T3, it actually shunts down into reverse T3. Just going to have a cup of tea. A sip of tea. Okay. So stress is a huge driving force. And the next one is inflammation. So inflammation at that cellular tissue level, absolutely reduces the T4 conversion to T3. Reverse T3, if you have not had that tested, I definitely recommend it. It will be an out-of-pocket expense. GPs don't tend to like to do it. Why? Because they don't have any medication or any fix for it. However, we do. It's really looking at the lifestyle. It's looking at ways in which to reduce stress, ways in which to change your way from the mindset, emotional well-being, the physical elements, everything, internal stresses, external stresses, family constellations, we look at the lot because it's all really, really important and valid. Just because you've been doing something forever and a day doesn't mean that it's right for your body. And sometimes when it's reflected to you or highlighted to you, it initiates a healing response where you know what to do for yourself, or you become aware of what needs to change. Okay. Now this is not an overnight thing. However, the reverse T3, it's just a marker. It's just telling me that there's stress. It doesn't tell me where it's coming from. So this is where, we work together thoroughly and on a deep level to really understand what's going on there so that we can create the shift and create the change. Nutrient cofactors. Okay, so we need our beautiful nutrients. They are cofactors. They are little helpers. They help everything do what it's supposed to do. So, there could be very good reason that the medication isn't working. If you don't have the right levels of selenium, zinc, iron, magnesium, and vitamin D, as an example, these are essential. They are very important cofactors for your thyroxine conversion to the more metabolically active hormone T3. And then the other one is adrenal stress and cortisol balance. Huge, huge. Cortisol, if you've got unmanaged stress and it's been going on for quite some time, the cortisol will actually circuit break the T4 to T3 conversion. It will stop it. And it will also push up your blood sugar. So this is why people with thyroid issues tend to have blood sugar issues as well, especially the hypothyroid or Hashimoto's. So we really need to look at that. It becomes like a tug of war between the thyroid and the adrenals, which in one of the functional tests that I will show up as a slow 3 metabolic type. Okay, so we have metabolic types, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have fast metabolic types, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this will show up as a slow 3, and that's when there's a tug of war between the thyroid and the adrenals. So it's just good to know. So when you know what's going on, you know how to fix it with the right minerals and the right dietary and lifestyle interventions to really help circuit break that pattern. Okay, so if any of this resonates with you, or if you are unsure of whether one of these hidden blocks is relevant in your specific case, I'd love you to type blocks in the comments. And you know what? We can send you some more resources. Momentarily, I will be writing a blog on this topic just to expand a little bit deeper on this. So certainly you can have more of a read and just get a little bit more of an understanding, because when we have that understanding, well, then we can be our own best detective at trying to pinpoint what's going on, so that we can really create that clear pathway so that these hormones or even artificial hormones such as thyroxine can do their job much more efficiently and effectively. Okay, and sometimes when we're correcting these problems, what we're doing as well is we're bringing the thyroid back online so that it can produce its own thyroxine. So typically, you can reduce the medication then as well. On that, the least amount of time that you've been relying on the medication, the better. The better the outcome in terms of reducing that dose. It's just like anything. Like if the body has been given, a helping hand, the tissues kind of desensitize. So we just want to, like I had a client, sorry, this just sprung to mind. I had a client about 3 years ago, a male client who was actually one of the first people in my thyroid restoration roadmap. And, he came off, we reversed his Hashimoto's and he came off medication. I just said, stop taking the medication straight away, because I could see that he didn't need it. He didn't need it, there was other blocks. And in fact, there were other medications that he didn't need either. So, we worked together for him to come off all of those medications. And, his thyroid, recalibrated, was fine. No problem at all, and now is living an abundantly healthy life. So yeah, when we know where to look, it's gold. Alrighty, so now I'm just going to talk a little bit about the role of cell membranes and mineral balance. So the hormones are only as effective as the cell membranes. Okay, so essentially we need to have nice flexible cell membranes rather than hard, rigid or inflamed membranes, because whenever there's inflammation, it's just really difficult for us to absorb nutrients. It's difficult for us to efflux toxins. And how healthy can we be if the cell membranes are really rigid and just rusty and inflamed? So this is a very important place to look. The other one is mineral imbalances, because we've got 4 major electrolytes. We've got calcium, magnesium, potassium, and sodium. And depending on those ratios will depend on whether you've got the backbone to support thyroid health or adrenal health, like a fast or a slow metabolic function or type. And it's also important to look at other ratios like the sodium to magnesium, which gives us an indication of adrenal function. So all this can be done quite easily through some functional testing. Knowing the minerals is key, because I've had people that are on thyroxine or being recommended thyroxine, but they don't need it. They just need rebalancing of the minerals and supporting the liver, supporting the detoxification organs and repairing the cell membranes, and then basically everything starts to work. Okay, so the poor old thyroid is kind of like the last domino to fall, and if we get everything else in order, it can often recalibrate. Like, it wants to be on your side. It is on your side. It's trying to do a good job. That's why we have the TSH that goes sky high, like alerting us that there's a problem. It doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, we need thyroxine, we need it now, because our body is so inadequate, it just can't do it anymore. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that, okay, well, here's a labored, sluggish thyroid. Let's see what's going on. Why is it labored? Why is it sluggish? Right? Let's look a little deeper and support the systems, support the organs, and support everything else so that the thyroid hormone can recalibrate and come back into harmony. Okay? All right. So, if you would like to learn more about the health and the level of health of your cell membrane, that is something that I recommend through a balance oil concept, which is an omega product with a very strong polyphenol. And irrespective of what's going on, with the amount of testing that I've done thus far, pretty much everybody is either out of balance or semi-balanced. I've only ever had one person in balance, and in terms of cell membrane ratios of omega-6 to omega-3. So if that's something that you're curious about and you're just wanting to know that, I could set you up with some functional testing on that, which is separate to what we do inside the thyroid restoration roadmap, because this is what I call a foundational layer. So irrespective of whether you've got cardiovascular issues, type 2 diabetes, brain fog, a sore big toe, whatever, it's important to know what's going on with your cell membrane. So at the very least, do yourself the honor of finding out more about what's going on with your cell membranes, and just type membranes in the comments. And what I'll do is I'll set up a quick call to discuss it a little bit further with you. And then the first thing you would do is test your cell membrane just through a skin prick test, just 2 spots of blood. Send that off and then go from there. Okay, and then you're taking this balance oil, and then at the end of month 4 you will retest that to see the difference. And generally across that time you will notice improvements of signs and symptoms. Okay, so if that's something that whether or not you know very much about me, or whether or not you wish to work with me in the thyroid restoration roadmap, irrespective of that, it's really important, in my opinion, to know what's going on with your cell membranes, because nutrients aren't going to know what to do if your cell membranes aren't healthy. So at the very least, look at this foundational layer. That's my strong recommendation. If that sparked your curiosity, just type membranes and then we can have a chat about that. Okay, alrighty. Whoops. Different setup today. Got my notes on printed paper, all right? Okay, so I just want to make sure that I don't miss anything. Okay, so now, I'm just going to talk about, this is what I go on about all the time. Ladies, gents, there's no one size fits all. Your symptom picture is very unique to you. The way your thyroid is behaving is very unique to you and what's going on in your body. So in my opinion, the best way to solve this problem is to do some detective work. And that's what I do in our thyroid restoration roadmap. Within the first month, we set you up with some functional testing that's bespoke to where the question marks are within your health picture. And then from there, we get to find out more information. And then from that information, we can create a targeted and more focused and tailored treatment plan to really repair these layers and repair these organs and tissues and areas within your body, systems. It could be a whole system, like for example, a digestive system, so that your body can come back into balance. Okay, so within our thyroid restoration roadmap, we have like a foundational element, which is called our conscious living for conscious living for wellness and vitality, which is really kind of like the foundational areas of health and wellness for you to really draw a lot of information from and really help to fortify your diet, your lifestyle, and all of these areas that you've been doing forever and a day. And then the other arm to our thyroid restoration roadmap is our very bespoke way in which I work with you as an individual on your health, which is highly confidential, based on your clinical picture, your signs and symptoms, and all the information and body wisdom that we understand about your body. And then with these two elements, we essentially help you craft your wellness blueprint and work with you across 4+1 months, because we're coming into Christmas. So, if you're wanting to jump in, there are some spaces at the moment. So if you're curious and if you'd like to learn more about the thyroid restoration roadmap and how that can help you with what's going on in your body, just type roadmap. And what we'll do is I'll reach out to you and we'll just drop a link to have a short 10-minute call. And then from that call, if I feel that I can help you, what we'll do then is we'll schedule a longer call and then we'll go from there. So this is all complimentary. This is the way in which I feel is the best way to honor you as an individual and for you to understand fully what we do as, a thyroid, what I do as a thyroid specialist. So, yeah, if you're curious, if you're interested, or if you've been taking medication for forever and a day and you're still wondering why you're not well, it's because we need to look at your big picture. All right. If you're just going to the doctors for a 15-minute consult or the endocrinologist for a little bit of testing and a 15-minute consult, and you're just tweaking your medication this way and that, and you've been doing that for the last, 5, 10, or 15 years, and you're still not feeling better, it's not going to solve the problem, right? We need to dig a little deeper. We need to respect you and your whole health as a picture, as opposed to just looking at the thyroid and, the level of hormones in the blood. Because that is very, very surface level. Very surface level. We need to dig deeper. So if that's something that you're willing to explore, I would love to have a conversation with you and see if we're a good fit. And if we are, we can go from there. If we're not, there's the likelihood I can recommend someone for you. I am quite well connected, so you'll at the very least have a next step. So I look forward to meeting you. Until then, just, do a little bit of detective work. Look out for my blog when I've got it written. If you're wanting to learn more about cell membranes, type cell membranes. If any of these blocks resonate with you, type blocks. And there are more blocks in this. I was just really talking about the conversion of T4 to T3. We've got, a whole plethora of issues that occur with the digestive system or the hormones, whether you're going through perimenopause or whatever. So there's so much more to look at, and it's time this paradigm is just chucked in the bin. And really we're moving into personalized nutrition, personalized care. It's got to be personalized. We can't just be dishing out, not we, I don't do it, I'm not a doctor. I can't prescribe medication anyway, but I would never, even if I could, there's no point in just dishing out this type of medication unless you don't have a thyroid gland, just willy-nilly expecting a result. Okay, in a small percentage of people, there is a great result. However, in a large proportion of people, there isn't a good result, which is why we need to dig deeper. So, if you're wanting to dig deeper, let's go. All right, that's it from me, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.